Hey, listeners, thank you so much for joining us for the second season of Midlife at the Mailbox. Over 8 years ago, Denyse and I met during a chance meeting at our neighborhood mailbox. Over the years, our friendship has blossomed into something bigger.
We can't wait to tell you all about it. And although we no longer share a mailbox, we really are closer than ever in real life. This meeting at the mailbox inspired a friendship, a business relationship, a lot of laughs, a couple tears, and now a podcast. So come along and listen in. We're so glad you're here. Picture it, Glenview, Illinois, a sunny spring day in May. Two neighbors come to meet at their mailbox to pick up their daily mail. The conversation ensues. Let's listen in. Hey, Amy, how's it going today?
Hey, Denyse, it's so great to see you. Oh my God, I feel like it's been forever.
I know. What have you been up to?
Oh my God, I've been so busy. Just yesterday, I was up and out of the house before 9 a.m. I had already taken a shower and gone to the grocery store. I had received an email. I had spoke at a local chamber of commerce last week, and the executive director sent over the list of emails. And so right after I got back from the store, I put together my email out to all of the attendees. And then I had a client that reached out to me for some help on an email platform. So I needed to jump on that. And then I forget already. Oh, then I had a beauty appointment in the middle of the day because, I'm all about my self-care. And after that, I had therapy. And then I had to sit down and work. I hadn't even really, truly, aside from the emails that I sent out, I hadn't even started my work day, and I had social media to post for my clients, and I had to finish an email blast. And so by the next time I look up, it's after 7. So it's so, so nice to be out of the house and seeing you at our mailbox so I could divulge my entire day. It was so busy.
Amy, you are busy. Okay, everyone, mailbox listeners, does this sound like a common conversation that you might have with your other adult friends? Because if you do, that's what we're here to talk about today. We're really here to talk about this idea of being busy, quote unquote, and this seeming cultural fixation on the busier you are, the more productive you are. That means the better human being potentially you are, right? And we, Amy really brought up this topic, and I agreed that this is wonderful to talk about because especially in midlife, we find ourselves busier than ever. And, we're just here to talk about today what that feels like for us, what that feels like for our clients. What does that feel like, as we are all the different roles in our life, whether it's entrepreneur, wife, mother, daughter, friend, how that all relates into our lives. So, Amy, was that a real day in your life?
Yes, that is actually a real day in my life, except for the grocery store happened actually today. But that is typically a day in my life, is that as we've talked about in our episodes of past, I do have my non-negotiables that I do truly try to get done the morning half of my day. And then by 11 o'clock, I usually like to sit down and start my work. But Mondays always tend to be a busy, busy day for me. The start of the week always tends to be. Yes. And I would like to, and that's something that as I speak to my therapist, something that I'd like to figure out a better way of planning my weeks so that not everything falls on a Monday.
And I think that's all. I think we all are, right? And if you get the anecdote for that, let the mailbox know, right? We might hit 1 million downloads on that, on that note. But I think it's a slippery slope, right? It's difficult to find because you are juggling lots of things. And I don't think that's uncommon, right? I mean, most people out there, Americans, let's just speak for Americans, are carrying different roles in their life. And then, that just plays out, especially when you're a parent, a working parent potentially, or just someone that's really involved in different aspects of their life. And you didn't even mention in that, kind of made up half truth, half mom story, Caleb or Mike. I'm sure you were doing things in between, prepping up dinner, fielding phone calls from your mom. You're super close with your family. So
Oh yes, there is no dinner. Last night we ordered pizza and wings from 2 separate restaurants that Mike went and picked up. But at my grocery store run today, we did pick up some food. So I will make an easy dinner. But Denyse, what have you been doing? Have you been super busy? Do you feel like, you've got this addiction to needing to stay busy?
I like being busy, and the idea of being busy is something I enjoy. I think because I fall prey to this idea that being productive is better, and I like feeling that way. It doesn't give me stress or anxiety for the most part most of the time. Now, I will say last year when I was volunteering as the PTA president of my children's school and also trying to build a business and being a wife and mother, that was too much. That was
Yeah.
too much for me. I did feel anxiety and stress that I have never experienced. And I like being busy. Everybody knows me. People that know me well know I like being busy. And I feel like I juggle it decently well, but not last year. I did not. So that's why I had to step down from that role. I said, I used to normally get a 2-year term and I said no. But I like it, but there's a balance, right? Because not everyone can kind of roll with my liking of busyness, even in my
Right.
own little nuclear family, right? My husband needs space and chill time, as we call it. And in the beginning of our marriage, we call it the chill police, right? On Saturday, I'd be like, let's go, let's do this, let's do that. And he's like, Denyse, I gotta chill. I gotta watch the Laker game. I gotta sit here and like just do nothing. That's how he revives himself and refreshes. But for me, I do like feeling, especially socially busy. I like that. So it's always a balance for me. But when it's too much, like in 2021 and 2022, I knew that wasn't healthy for myself. So
Interesting. Well, and I feel like too, and I'm going to go back before that. So, like through the pandemic, one of the things that we recognized was that we also really enjoy being busy, but the busyness that we were used to were things that brought our family like to life. So things like going to watch Caleb play hockey and going to the movies or out to dinner or to travel and do all of the things that the world basically, said, nope, you can't do this anymore because you are going to get COVID. That was very hard for us. And when we recognized that, we realized that we do, like you, enjoy that socialization of busyness. However, where I think that we're going to take this conversation is that there is in our society this addiction to being busy. Whereas like when we say addiction, just as harmful as drugs, alcohol, being addicted to your phone, online gambling, those, different vices, busy is also something that you get addicted to. Like I don't even know if it's necessarily like a rush, but you often feel like that's like the common thing. So when you asked me like, Amy, what's going on? And, we were kind of half joking. Oh, I'm so busy. Think about how often you as a person say that to somebody else when they ask you.
right. There was a meme I was looking for. I couldn't find it today, but it was a meme where I've seen it and it says, you know, typical line an adult says is like, after blank, right? After this week, after I get through blank or this week, I'll be so much less busy. I'll feel so much better, right? And then usually the truth in that is that you're not because something else comes up, right? And then it's like, the next event or the next prep up that
There's
are
always
getting
something.
for. So
There's always something.
if someone finds that meme, let me know. It's a funny one.
I remember growing up and when my mother was a teacher and everything that we needed from her, like if it was like a bigger project, she was like, in the summer. And so it like became like a running joke because she couldn't get it done during the school year, but in the summer, she also couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And now she's retired. We were just chatting about that offline, and we're saying, like, what do our parents do? My mother is constantly so busy. She is the busiest retired woman I know. I don't know if any of the other listeners out there like feel the same way about your parents, but I don't know. I don't know what it is that she does all day, but she is super busy.
Right. And I mean, I think, if you like being busy and it's not stressful, like, keep doing what you're doing. But I think, like Amy said, we're talking about maybe potentially the pitfalls of being too busy, right? Or feeling that if you don't like being busy, but feeling like you have the need to say that because it's like a status symbol, right? Which
Correct.
also isn't good, right? And
Right.
it could, and it has a lot of downtrodden effects to the kids if you have them, or even just other people in your life, right?
How do you think, Denyse, that as a culture, we got to this point where busy is seen as this like status symbol? Do you think it's like a more recent phenomenon? Do you think it's been around for a long time?
Well, I think that Americans have always tended probably to have a busier quote unquote life than maybe other cultures, just due to the fact that we are an entrepreneurial or enterprising society in general. And so, it's like the mantra, the harder you work, the more money you'll make, or at least the last 100 years that seemed to be the case. So,
Right.
this idea that I have to work more, right, to get money. I mean, we know now that isn't always the case. However, that hardworking American dream that saying didn't come from, a minority of people. It came from a majority of people trying to strive for that, right? And with good cause, right? Most of American history relates to that, right? However, I do think that the advent of the internet and and our phones potentially also allow us to always quote unquote have literally the power of the world's information in our hands at any time of the day, whether it's 8 in the morning or 1:30 in the morning, right? So you can be quote unquote productive or doing something all times of the day. So I do think that before, if you wanted to research, let's say if you were doing a project about Beethoven and you were a student, prior to 1980, you probably have to wait to go to the library the next day. There was no way in the middle of the night you're going to, unless you're an encyclopedia, I guess. But
that was not even, well, I mean, in the 90s, I had like the not online encyclopedias, but I had like the CD-ROM that I could put into my computer.
Right.
But prior to that, yeah.
Yeah, you would have to wait to go to the library the next morning and research Beethoven if you had forgotten to do a research paper, right? If you were in high school. Now, technically, you could, if you had remembered at 10 o'clock at night, you could, bust out the internet, get some basic sources, probably log on to your
go
school
to Chat AI.
Yeah, Chat
GPT.
Yeah, and use your or use your online library access and get access to like all the same books you would have gotten in 1980 if you had to go and wait for the library to open at 9 a.m. the next morning, right? So I think that, advent of technology has helped us in so many ways, but I think it also maybe puts some sort of guilt or obligation that if you're sitting there and doing something, like sometimes I'm watching TV and I'm like, oh, my daughter wants me to buy her this, like something at Target, right? Oh, I could go on there and buy it right now. So it's ready for me tomorrow morning. But 40 years ago, I would have had to wait to go to Target the next morning and I probably would have been a lot more relaxed. But
so you think that with the advent of all of the technology at our fingertips, that some of this culture of busyness is probably added over the past, say, 20, 30 years?
I mean, I'd say so. I mean, it's hard, hard to say with a full certainty because, I also was, 20 or 30 years ago, I was a child.
Right.
So, my parents were busy, but I remember them being very busy. But the difference was that, they could turn their work off at night. My mom was a school teacher, so there was no classroom. I mean, she still would not have that problem, but she wouldn't even have a computer to work up lesson plans. My dad was a salesman. most of his success came well before the internet. He had a fax machine, but like even then, like I guess even with the fax machine, right? I mean, sometimes he would be placing orders through a fax machine, sending them through because he was a traveling salesman late at night. And even that, right? 10 years prior to that in the 70s, he would have had to wait to go to the next morning to hand in his, handwritten
His
orders
orders.
on microfiche, right? To send in. So, while I think that has helped us in so many ways, I also think it potentially has had cultural effects in the United States specifically, right?
Yeah, I agree with you within the United States that I think that it's more here than even overseas in Europe. And I think the European countries have set it up in such a way with vacations and siestas and like the long vacation time, right? And then the maternity leave and just all of those pieces that, European countries provide to their people, I think help encourage a society where you are not always just busy.
Right.
And that you could almost like the forced relaxation. I was in a networking meeting the other day, and one of the women in the group had said that they don't have like their PTO policy was like when I was at Groupon, which was you have unlimited PTO. And I remember like we took we took vacation time for sure. And even this woman was saying, even within her office, people don't take their vacation time.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an American phenomenon, but
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Take your vacation time.
Yeah. And, you hear that a lot of people, my candidates and my clients that come to me with burnout, right? And that's a very, it feels like a very commonly used phrase these days because it is it's a real thing, obviously. People were getting burned out before, obviously, but I think that it has bubbled up to the surface as a more common conversation piece because so many people are experiencing it. I think the pandemic didn't help either because people were all at home working. They didn't have those community aspects that they did before where they could take breaks, quote unquote, and feel at different aspects of their community, whether it was through fitness or even just a commute, right?
Yeah.
Giving a buffer. I mean, commutes are not always healthy and contribute to busyness, of course, but at the same token, you had a buffer between yourself and the office. Now, especially when everyone was required to work at home, you didn't really have any. So people were working 12, 13 hours, right? Because they feel they had to prove themselves, right? Almost like a badge of honor. That they were worthy of keeping their jobs, right? So I did a little research on this, Amy, before we met because, like we said, there's positives to busyness. And a lot of times in our podcast, we talk about being more productive, right? That's a common theme. You and I like feeling productive. But what about when it's not productive, right? What are some of the ways that a problem with busyness that you can kind of identify in yourself or maybe in others or loved ones? And this is what there's a psychologist, not Samantha Boardman, but another psychologist that I came across in my research. Her name is Dr. Christine Hibbert. And she talked about things that she saw as problems with busyness. The first one was it distracts us, right, from deeper, more meaningful things, right? And so, when we're busy, we don't have time to think about, maybe some of the underlying problems that we have. Do you find that to be true?
Yes. Yes, for sure. I think you throw yourself into oftentimes people throw themselves into work or they throw themselves into a project in order to escape the thing that they know. So whether it be an unhappy marriage or different life problems or different habits that they need to change, people utilize being busy as this form of escape. And
what happens a lot of time with grieving people who are grieving the loss of someone. A lot of times people, sometimes people, want to crawl into a cave and hibernate, right? And escape the world. But other people actually, appear to be super busy, right? You see that person who just lost, a loved one and they're, you expect them to be, kind of to themselves, but they're like, oh no, I got to do this and I got to do that. And it's, I often worry about those type of people because I think, oh, I wonder when it's all going to come crashing down, right? When the grief is going to, swallow them because they're not allowing themselves to feel that way. They're just escaping, escaping those feelings by keeping quote unquote busy, right? So,
right. So, it's definitely distracting from that meaningful and deeper connection. But it also, as we're talking about, it is a form of escape, which is a problem, right? Because if you're not recognizing that you have, or you are recognizing that you have these situations, but by working longer hours, you're not necessarily spending as much time at home or spending as much time with your family. And it leads to it leads to that stress and burnout that we had talked about a little bit ago. And that lack of a work-life balance. So, making
so
sure
she
that
said that too. That was her second. That was her
yeah.
That was her second thing was she mentioned it's a form of escape, right? So that was the second thing that she, a problem or a red flag if you see it with a loved one or yourself, that it's beware of it being a form of escape, right? In a bad way. And sometimes escaping can be a coping mechanism, but if it's going on for, seemingly longer time than it should potentially, that's when maybe to, raise concern with that person or yourself, right?
Yeah.
It can also be, Dr. Chris Hibbert mentioned it could be a false substitute for self-worth, right? Feeling truly self-worth, right? Because the busy you are, quote unquote, the more you're important, right? And the more things you to do means that you're getting things done and you're, successful, right? And society reinforces this. Mailbox family, the 2023 job market can be tricky to navigate, but it doesn't have to be. Working with an experienced career transition specialist like myself at Denyse Rabat Career Coaching can help you with common issues that trip up many job seekers, like how to do resume revisions, networking strategies on LinkedIn, how to answer the infamous interview question, tell me about yourself, and so much more. Visit my website, drcareercoaching.com, and click on the Speak with Denyse button in the top right-hand side of the page to set up a complimentary session to discuss your current career needs and a plan that we can put in place to help you. That's drcareercoaching.com. See you guys back at the mailbox.
So the negative effects and the vulnerability of being busy is that it leads to that stress, the burnout, the lack of the work-life balance. And it also makes it difficult to prioritize what's really important, such as the relationships, the self-care, and personal growth. So, for example, if you are spending all of your time thinking, and I'm very guilty of this. I don't know how you feel, Denyse, but I know I am guilty of this in the sense that I have to complete X, Y, and Z for my clients. And I know that I have to practice the self-care piece, but on days that I'm like yesterday, that I'm super caught up in my whirlwind of my day, the one thing that is neglected from that entire day is me. When maybe if I would step away from the computer for 30 minutes and go for a walk or get on my treadmill when the weather is still crappy like it is here, the rest of my day potentially could be that much more productive because I've taken that time for myself. But there's this vulnerability that we are worthy based off of what we put into the world, right? So going back to, if we're spending a lot of time working, that means we're being productive. And by being productive, that means we're achieving X, Y, and Z goals. And I know you and I talked about your clients and the candidates that you're working with for their jobs. And, and I want you to talk a little bit about how them being busy in terms of like how they're applying for jobs is often like a negative because they're like over applying versus, quality, not quantity. And then I could see the same thing within my clients and even in conversations that I had. Like I recently had a call with a woman who's a business owner, and she is like, I just don't have time. I don't want to look things over. I don't have time. I just need to be able to know that I can hand this off to somebody. And that's a great piece to like recognize that you don't have time. But there's also a piece to it that like, what is it in your day that, that you don't have even like 5 minutes to like review something that reflects you and your business. Right. So I don't know, but I wanted to throw it back to you real quick to chat about from the candidate side, like what you see with candidates when they're saying that they are super busy.
Sure. So, a lot of times, like Amy said, I hear this a lot, usually the first meeting or the second meeting of when I'm working with someone and maybe they've been out of work a month and this is our first meeting and they'll say, oh my gosh, I've been out of work a month and I'm really concerned. I've applied to over 100 jobs and I've only heard back from one or none, or I haven't heard back anything, or I've only gotten rejection letters. And, I'll pause for a moment and, having met like over the last 3 years, I've met over 700 clients through my work, but mostly through LHH. And it's a consulting company that I work for. And so when I hear that, I think to myself, oh my gosh, my heart goes out to you because I know how much work it is to put in 100 job applications. And I'm not kidding. A woman like in the last 2 months said this to me from one of the big tech layoffs, and she was distraught. She was beside herself. And I said, oh my gosh, I really applaud the fact that you put in so much time in your job search to do that. But to be honest, we find that that's not the most productive use of the time. The numbers show that actually networking is a better use of your time, applying to jobs. Of course, you have to apply to jobs. That's part of the gig, but there's no way she was qualified for 100 roles that she applied to. And just, she just really flooded these different companies with like all sorts of different information, when if she probably had applied to ones that were the most, the best match, but then spent most of her time networking, that's a much more productive way, right? So in that instance, being busy wasn't really, she felt like she was doing the right thing by applying and just, spraying and praying really. But at least for job seeking, we just find that not to be true.
Right.
And so that's that comes up a lot with my clients or my business. But I think it's also an anecdote. It could be a metaphor for also, yourself personally, right? One of the pitfalls that Dr. Hibbert also talked about was that, being busy can be addicting, or it can be like a drug, because
Right.
you are, when you're busy, you feel good, that dopamine hit, you got adrenaline, you feel like you're, a part of something bigger than you are. But is that really tying back to your long-term and short-term goals, right? So, I always tell my clients that too. Your short-term goal is to find work, right? But what if you really wanted to make a change, right? And that's what we talked about a lot on the podcast, right? Finding that true purpose, or finding, you've done something for 30 years, but now you really want to do something else. And what does that look like? And not trying to lose sight of our long-term goals. And when you're busy, sometimes those extra things can get in the way, and and then that really takes away from, I think potentially your overall happiness in midlife, or, goals that you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I think the alternatives to a culture of busyness is there are other ways to think about work and productivity and success that don't involve constantly being busy, right? So I think thinking about, as we wrap, like, how do we reframe our thinking to prioritize our well-being and the overall quality of life while fulfilling our needs and desires for work and for play and for health and family. And so I think, having conversations with people who have experienced the negative effects of busyness, firsthand, and have found ways to break free from it. I know we've offered over the past few episodes some potential ways on how changing small habits can also lead to breaking this cycle and to be able to kind of prioritize the self-care, that work-life balance, over that constant pursuit of being busy. So thinking about how there are small things that you could be doing within your day. Is it I'm going to work, 2 hours, and then every day I'm going to sit down at my desk at 9, work till 11, and then every day from 11 to 11:30, I'm going to walk, and then I'm going to actually take a lunch away from our desk, right? So now it starts to take away from this, I'm going to sit at my desk for 8 hours, and I'm also going to eat lunch at my desk, and I'm not going to get any sort of fitness in. I think those are some of the things that you could start to think about, is like, how are some small changes to your day able to encapsulate, you versus this badge of honor of being busy. What would you say?
Yeah, I agree. And time blocking, I think that helps me in a lot of that. When I time block, I can realize, when I can, add in like fitness or whatnot. And I find when I don't do that, like a day like today, and things kind of got like, a little bit out of my plan. So I'd say that. Another thing that, Dr. Hibbert mentioned is a way that she consults her clients on how to overcome this busyness addiction, or, problems with the busyness, is giving yourself like a detox time frame, right? Like, maybe start saying no, for a time period, whether that's like a season or a month, and start, saying no to certain things. I find that can also be helpful. I did that with the PTA. I was heavily involved in the school, and, typically a PTA president will sit on for 2 years because, you kind of, the learning curve is high the first year.
Sure.
And then by the second year, all the players, you've done the projects, you've done the budget, you have your board in place, and it should be a lot smoother than the first year. And while that was sold to me a lot, by previous presidents and friends and colleagues, and as much as I was committed to our school, I really just had to say no for the betterment of myself, of my family, of my home life. And, and I left, of course, the school in good hands. I made sure, but that was a goal of mine. I actually said in January, I said, find a reputable president to take over for the next school year, because I already knew in January that it wasn't sustainable. And I hadn't even gotten to the quote unquote busy part of the year, which was the end of the year, which is really a busy season for the PTA. So trying to say no to things you can. I mean, of course, you can't say no to your work, or you can't say no to,
But I think you can say no to an extent in work, right? I think that you can work on ways to say that you don't have the bandwidth to take on a particular project, right? I think for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs like ourselves, we think that there's 2 camps, right? Oh, you look like you're so busy. And, my response is, yes, I'm almost purposeful in terms of making myself look busy, because there is a sense that if I look busy, that I must be doing really well. And so, I have a lot going on. It takes up a lot of my time, but I still have time, right? So I'm making myself busy in order to prove to myself that I am valuable and I am worthy of potential new business that could be coming my way. And so that is not necessarily a healthy way of thinking about things, right? Because I should not need to feel valuable and worthy just based off of me generating new business, right? I am already valuable. I know what I'm talking about. I am a great teacher. And those are the things that I know that I should be telling myself on a daily basis to prove to myself that I don't need all of the other extra noise, in teaching me that I am important and that I'm, worthy of these potential deals. So Anyways, I think we have highlighted a lot of really, really great things here, Denyse, today for our listeners. And I think the call to action that we leave you with is, do you want to stay addicted to being busy? Or could this episode be that heed to wake up and to kind of think about a deeper, richer life where you don't need to be wearing that busyness as a badge of honor, where you don't need the busyness to show you that you are important and valuable, to show you that you are also worthy of all of the things that you deserve. And if you're not busy, that you don't matter. I don't think that if you're busy, if you are sitting on the couch at home and not out with your friends, like, you know what? Don't have that FOMO. Because they're going to come back tomorrow and they're all going to be hungover. And
Well,
you know
have you heard
what?
of
You're going to feel
JOMO?
really good.
Have you heard of JOMO?
What's JOMO? Job?
No, Amy, it's the joy of missing out. So a friend of mine,
I love
a friend of mine shared that with me because I have a friend and she's a common phrase. She's like, I have FOMO, right? It's one friend. And then the other, we're all in a text chain of different moms at our school. And the other friend says, yeah, so-and-so, you need to have JOMO, right? And we're like, what the heck is JOMO?
I love JOMO.
It's a joy of missing out. And so if that's what you need, right? And I mean, if you're not busy, and you want to be, I mean, we have lots of productivity podcasts in our archives, but I mean, I think this is for the people where it feels toxic, right? And I think
Yes.
that the takeaway is, and I think building on some of the other habits we talked about is starting small, as Amy encapsulated today. If you're a job seeker or just looking to make a change, sometimes less is more, right? And that is also time blocking yourself or planning your day. As sometimes as annoying as it is, can be helpful. Also, just saying no is something we've tried. I tried it. Trust me. People ask me, "What do you think about not being the president?" I'm like, I'm so happy the school is in good hands and that my house is in better hands, right? So,
Right.
And so saying no in that instance didn't feel great at the beginning, but man, it feels good this year. And knowing also that the school.
But the thing about it not feeling good at the beginning was that you were feeling like that you were letting people down, right? So by saying no, there was like a vulnerability there in the sense that like you're not holding up your end of the bargain. But the reality of it is that you were doing what was best for you. And that is hard. It is super, super hard to often just do what's best for us.
Tough decisions, right? And if you are feeling like you're escaping, you're using busyness as an escape mechanism, right? Try to, take one area of your life, right, where you can make it less busy, right? Maybe it's your children's activities, or maybe it's one less, extracurricular you're doing in your life, right? And see if that helps you feel a little bit more grounded, right? And maybe you won't feel good, but then it'll kind of get to the root of maybe something that's kind of festering or bothering you, right? And then let that feeling kind of wash itself over you potentially, and maybe see what comes out of that. That's also something that Dr. Hibbert talked about, right? Seeing what happens when you're not busy can be even more telling than when you are, right? If you're using it
and
as
how you feel.
Yeah, using it as a form of escape, right? And if you do feel that way, of course, Mailbox advocates for finding help, right? Therapy, using any type of community resource, 811, mental health, suicide hotline, all those things, right? I mean, of course, we're going to two extremes here, but in that instance, right, that's potentially a pitfall of being busy, right? And then when you stop being busy, so we want to make sure that people recognize those things as well.
Correct.
All right. I think this was good. I, got a lot of my busyness out of here. Is there anything that you're going to do out of our conversation? Any lightning things that you're going to do so I can hold you to it next time?
Well, one of the things that I have been working on since the beginning of the year with my therapist is being comfortable with saying no. And the JOMO, right? And being okay with that joy of missing out, right? And not feeling like I am missing out or letting somebody down, because that is a big piece for me. And so I've been better. I have definitely been better. I have the 24-hour rule where if someone asks me to do something, to be someplace that I know may not serve me 100% in the time, right? I don't even necessarily, I have still been asking for permission, but I'm told don't ask for permission. Just say, I need to think about it. I will get back to you and let you know. So that's something that I have been practicing is figuring out ways to say no when it doesn't necessarily serve me. What about you?
Same, and maybe just trying to overschedule myself and my family. I can handle it, but a lot of times I'm realizing that they can't, and that
Correct.
it's not a healthy thing. Because I like to go from here to there, but and sometimes you're right. Like the older I get, I'm finding that actually the joy of that is dimmed, and maybe that's a little bit with COVID when we saw like a slower lifestyle, which kind of
Yep.
was nice, and so avoiding overscheduling if I can. So in a sense, that's also saying no to certain things, of course. But some of it I kind of do on my own, which I should like, I think, oh, I can squeeze both of these things in, kind of like today. And that was, I don't know, I pushed it to the line a little bit too much, but I'm trying to do less of that, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm trying to. I had one of those epiphanies this weekend about something and tried to overschedule a Sunday and it didn't really work out, but it was good. I didn't overschedule my family, so I just did me. And then
We both forgot that because we were both so overscheduled, we forgot that we
that's
were
true.
going to actually try to record this episode. So then we
What
had
a
to
great example. What a
Right?
great example. Yes. What a great way to end it. So by no means are we prophets. However, we're just kind of sharing an observation that we had. And we hope that this episode inspires you to be a little less busy if you are too busy. And if and to maybe use one or two of our tips to try to make your life a little less hectic. So thanks, Amy, for being vulnerable here today at the mailbox. And hopefully our next mailbox chat, our next mailbox chat will be about how we decompressed and maybe took a little bit of the busyness out. So all you listeners have a great week and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for this week. In season 2, our goal is to share actionable tips with you. We hope this podcast episode leaves you feeling encouraged and full of midlife energy. But don't go away yet. Be sure to check out our show notes. And while you're there, click to join our email list. We promise we will send only meaningful content. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram too, for the show at Midlife at the Mailbox, or our individual accounts for our own tips and tricks at Amy L. Alex 28 and Denyse Rabat. That's Denise with a Y. Thanks, Mom. So that we can come into your inbox each week and your feed almost daily.
If you're a seasoned listener or just found us, we're glad you did. Make sure that you are following our show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you hear, please share our episode with your midlife bestie and leave us a 5-star review so more awesome listeners like you can discover Midlife at the Mailbox. We release new episodes every other week on Thursdays. At least we try. Our podcast is a production from the minds of 2 midlife besties and produced with love by the very creative Amy Alexander and Denyse Rabat. Professional video and audio editing by Hivecast. See you at the mailbox.
Bye.